So, a lot of my ideas come from listening conversations, having conversations, memes. I don't like memes. Everybody knows. Anybody that knows me knows I can't stand them. I can't stand one-liners. Those are for comics. One-liners are for comics. Um, they do not express everything that you deal with in life, and they don't express them fully. Like they're half-ass, right? If you have a one-liner and you live your whole life by a one-liner, let me promise you, you're living your entire life half-ass. Um, and nobody actually is. If you are, again, I'd be shocked, but still, we one-liner shit and make it sound like it's really good, and it's not. Um, but the one-liner or the meme, and it wasn't a one-liner, it's actually two sentences, was a lazy employee is lazy all the time and no one bats an eye. And a hardworking employee is lazy one day and everyone loses their mind. Everybody's heard this in some shape or form, and everybody can agree with it, right? Even the lazy people agree with it. It's amazing, but this is true. So there's a funny thing about even the lazy people agreeing, and in this stage of our society, we seem to be having a lot of people suffering from Dunning-Kruger effect. And the opposite is imposter syndrome. I don't like that name. I think it's the wrong name for it, but I will get into that also why. But let's talk about Dunning-Kruger, because that's really kind of important for us to talk about. It's not the main focus. I want to get into that imposter syndrome. But Dunning-Kruger, you can't really understand imposter syndrome without talking about Dunning-Kruger effect. And Dunning-Kruger effect is basically where someone you know thinks they know, believes they're competent or knows they're competent. A lot of people are very competent in one or two things. And that competence in one thing, they project into everything else. So they know everything about everything. I would be the first one to tell you, and my son will attest to this. While I know a lot about legal stuff, just by proxy and by necessity, and then of course by the fact that my family expected me to be a lawyer from the time before I was 2 years old. But I'm not a lawyer. And if you need a lawyer, you need a lawyer. Period. Period. You do not know. You are not this guru. And there's just way too much that goes into the law for someone to be able to properly defend themselves. And there are incompetent lawyers. We watch it all the time on TV. It plays out. So the idea that somebody that has no training could be more competent than an incompetent attorney with training is kind of laughable, because they passed the bar. But that's an example of Dunning-Kruger. This person assuming that they know more than an attorney does. An actual ABA attorney. Come on, they passed the bar, for fuck's sake. Even an incompetent lawyer is more competent than any of us. Sure, okay, maybe the Unabomber can do all of his own work from his jail cell. But with rare exception, no, absolutely not. But that's Dunning-Kruger effect, when you see somebody think, oh, yeah, I can do it. I've seen people who are financially strapped and think, yeah, I'm going to do it myself because I'm better than the PD. That could be true, unfortunately. But that is not the norm. And it's still not a good position to put yourself in. Dunning-Kruger, we see it all the time in society right now, where people know absolutely nothing about another subject, and people that are very, very, very educated. We see more recently, a guy is in the news about, and he was super arrogant, like multiple wives, all this other stuff, right? He's a surgeon, and he just thinks he's meow, meow, meow mix. And he thinks he's so great that he can do research on top of being a surgeon, this great surgeon. He can do research on human beings. And he's selling it as he's saving their lives while he's literally using them as guinea pigs. That's Dunning-Krueger. That's arrogant. He thinks he can do research that other people would normally do first on animals. And he's going to do it on a human being. And he's going to do it on multiple human beings because he is that much smarter than everyone else that he understands how research works. On top of it, using human guinea pigs is not research. He wasn't even documenting any of the research that needed to be documented by these guinea pig trials using human beings. He didn't know how to do research. He knew how to be a surgeon. We then look at other neurosurgeons. Like there's a neurosurgeon that wanted to run for, political office, claiming he knew more about international policy than someone with the same amount of education. Think tanks with quadruple, 100 times, 1,000 times more education in policy, in political policy, and international policy than he had. Because let's be clear, if someone has their master's and doctorate, they have almost the same amount of schooling years as a medical doctor. But they have earned that in whatever field they've gone into. So no, a medical doctor does not know more about international policy than someone that went to Columbia University for their bachelor's, Princeton University for their master's, and Harvard for their doctorate in international policy. Bullshit. But all of a sudden, because a lot of people suffer from Dunning-Krueger at various levels, we assume this jackass knows just as much as every other expert because he has been a major #1 neurosurgeon. It's idiotic. I'm not an expert in anything. Really, I'm not. The only thing I'm really, really, really proficient in is statistics, and I don't even like doing them. I'm good at a lot of things, but I'm not Joe expert on anything. I like to joke that I'm not. I like to dabble. I love to read. I love to have discussions with intellectual people. Some people are more intellectual than others in my experiences. And some of the people that are very intellectual, I don't usually like. They're fascinating. I don't usually like them. The people I do like, a lot of times I like them even less because they assume they're better than they actually are. And it's the Dunning-Krueger effect. There's an assumption that they know more than they actually do. And then you're having a conversation with someone that you obviously, they don't know what they're talking about. And you're in a rock, in a hard place. I don't like to have those conversations. I don't like to be on the front end of being the one that doesn't know. I have had conversations with people that are extremely well educated, who are way more educated in certain aspects of life than I am. And I have listened to how they don't really have any knowledge in what you're talking about, but boy, do they think they do. I've had a doctor literally tell me what it's like to be an engineer. It was kind of comical. But it's an example of Dunning-Krueger effect. He was a doctor, so therefore he knows what it's like to be an engineer. I had a guy I used to work with tell me He knew exactly what it was like about women's rights. He believed women's rights was bullshit. And he knew exactly what it's like to be a woman. God help his wife, man. Can you imagine being a woman and married to a guy who tells you exactly what it's like to be a woman? Okay. So that's Dunning-Krueger. That's Dunning-Krueger. You know, because you know this and you're proficient at this, you know everything about that. But then we get into imposter syndrome, which is the opposite, or often referred to as the opposite, right? Imposter syndrome is where you believe that you are lacking. You are proficient, or you don't even think you're proficient, but you are proficient, you are capable, you are that person. You know what you're talking about, right? And the hardest part for imposter syndrome is that anybody, Dunning-Krueger or not, of people, anyone can make you second guess yourself. I've been there, done that, rode that pony. I do not like the term imposter syndrome. After years of observing a lot of people, especially younger guys, granted, again, my field, and women for that matter, there's quite a few younger women that are entering engineering more and more. And the male dominated, like mechanical. What I have seen is it's far more common for people to suffer from this quote unquote imposter syndrome and second guess themselves. And it's kind of heartbreaking when you see a 30 something, 40 something, 20 something, especially 20 somethings that always usually have that are worth their salt question themselves. But 30 something, 40 somethings that really can be browbeaten by some jackass, really upset me. And if you watched the episode about bullies, you know how I feel about it. And I don't like that we call it imposter syndrome. I think it's a telltale sign of the same thing that I've talked about before. We love to beat down the little guy. We love it. Every so often somebody will say, oh, yeah, underdogs. We love the underdog. No, we fucking don't. We love an underdog that becomes a success story. But we will beat the shit out of that underdog as long as we can. We will take from them. We will beat them down. We will tell them how shitty they are. We will let other people tell them how shitty they are. We will beat an underdog down. That's why there are underdogs. Okay? And calling it imposter syndrome implies that they're fake, that they're not really what they say they are. It's bullshit. It's self-victimization is what it is. It's not imposter. They're not pretending to be what they're not. They are so unconfident that they feel like they're faking it. That's not the same as imposter. An imposter is Dunning-Krueger effect, pretending that you know what it's like to be a woman when you have no idea what it's like to be a woman. That's an imposter. Dunning-Krueger effect are imposters. We should call Dunning-Krueger effect the imposter syndrome. The imposter syndrome should be called self-victimization, self-abuse, given a name that implies lack of confidence to the point of sabotaging yourself, to the point of hurting yourself, as far as subject A, it. I've watched this. I've watched a guy who I knew understood the statistics. I knew it. That's my guru bullshit, right? I knew it. I knew he knew. But he questioned it. Why? Because some jackass suffering from Dunning-Krueger just kept going, me. You created the imposter syndrome for this guy. I watched him do it to multiple guys. Same guy. Not just this one guy that I'm talking about, but the one that he did it to was really close to my heart. I mean, I just really liked the guy. He was younger. He was a sweet, wonderful young man. He had everything that he wanted in life, and he was a good guy, or is a good guy, still a good guy. But I watched him be beaten up and browbeaten, and of course that didn't help his imposter syndrome, wondering if he deserved where he was at, or deserved the accolades where he was at. He questioned himself all the time. He didn't need to. And I think it's wrong to call it an imposter syndrome. I think psychologists often reflect our society. And one of the things our society absolutely loves to do is beat the shit out of people for being good or better at something, or questioning themselves. Anybody that questions themselves must know that they're not really that good. People that question themselves are actually the smarter people. So why, in the ever-loving shit, psychologists would call it imposter syndrome, like implying immediately. You hear it in that it's implied that you're fake, you're phony, you're an imposter. We beat people up for being good people. Because to me, if you question yourself regularly, you're a good person. You are. If you say, well, did I do that wrong? I'm going to improve this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to be better at this. I'm going to work at that. I've met people that they really think they're meow, meow, meow mix. And they often want to use people to their own end. They don't give a shit about other people. Fuck. Look at that surgeon that I mentioned for right off the bat. You think he gave a shit that those people were going to die? That those people might have a 99% chance of dying? Because he wasn't even keeping track of his track record. He was lying to people and telling them, oh, well, they're all living. They're all doing well. They were all dead. He didn't give a shit about the actual track record. He's not keeping track and being like, fuck. He wasn't even doing real research. Literally, everyone that man touched had a 100% chance of dying. Because everyone before them died. While he used all these people as guinea pigs and lied. That is imposter syndrome. That should be called imposter syndrome. Where this man took people's lives and didn't think anything of it because he was an imposter. He was lying. No. Let's call the people that self-analyze, second-guess themselves. Let's call them imposters. That makes total sense. Weirdly enough, if you start looking up research about this, and of course, I always come back to the women's rights a little bit, especially in this case. A lot of it will focus on women. Why? It's not because no women suffer from Dunning-Krueger. I promise you that. I have worked for one that did. And she cost a major corporation a shit ton of money in EPA fines and similar fines globally. She was fake it till you make it big time, and she suffered from Dunning-Krueger like there was no tomorrow. And she was vicious and heinous, just like that doctor. Only difference was she didn't have the ability to kill anybody with her experimenting. Although I'm sure some EPA person would probably argue with me that she did a lot of damage to our environment. But a lot of women are often cited in both Dunning-Krueger and imposter syndrome. Made me wonder if that's why the imposter syndrome, let's blame women. We always love to blame women. Again, we love to be down the down. Why not? You already are second guessing your capabilities, even though you are completely proficient and probably better than most of the people in your job. But let's beat you down by calling it imposter syndrome. You're suffering from imposter syndrome. Or you could do better. You could do so much better, but you suffer from imposter syndrome. Holy shit. We are beating down the people that actually are good at what they do and question their ability by calling it imposter syndrome. Fuck off. And then you tell women this. I mean, I had a doctor tell me you suffer from imposter syndrome. I was like, what? You believe that you are far less educated and far less capable. I do, amazingly. I do. I question my abilities all the time. I have gone through somebody asking me about statistics and putting me through a ringer about it when I knew that I knew it since I was a little girl. I mean, I won't get into how, but I mean, when I was a little girl, my uncle basically taught me statistics. And so as I got older, I was just really good at it. I was just naturally good at it. It's hard not to if somebody's teaching it to you at a young age. Just didn't know what all the names were. But when somebody pop quizzed me, I was terrified. I was terrified that he was going to think that I was an imposter, right? That's where they get the name imposter syndrome. You're afraid of somebody claiming you're an imposter, even if you're not. In fact, that is part of the requirement, is that you're actually not an imposter. You actually are qualified. You're actually capable. But you think that someone might accuse you. Think about that. Again, it's just ridiculous that we call it that. It is. It's ridiculous that some fucking idiotic doctor somewhere decided, and a whole crew, I think it's called that in their medical book for analysis, a whole crew of them decided that sounded right. Let's give it that nickname. What the hell's wrong with you people? We beat the people down that are already down. It's one of our favorite things to do. Abuse the people who are already down. Kick them while they're down, damn it. Anyway, maybe we need to start thinking about the fact that people that are qualified to do things don't necessarily want to be more either. Even corporate structure forces people into this imposter. When you go for your annual interview, and everybody that works does, right? Companies, well, what do you want to do next? What are your goals? Where do you see yourself in the next 5-10 years? When you asked me that, I was 51 years old. My goal is to be not working by 55 at the latest. That's my goal. Well, what would you like to be doing in 5 years? Sitting on a beach drinking Mai Tais? Sitting in my house doing this? I didn't want to keep working past 55. I didn't want to work past 50. Not in engineering anyway. So I was kind of a quandary every time they'd ask me, because I'm honest. I'm like, okay, so let's not be dishonest. How can I be honest about this and tell somebody that I have goals that I don't have? So I thought about it. Okay, if I have to work until I'm 63 years old, what would I want to be doing? Well, I'd want to be doing this. I'd want to be doing that. If I had to. And in hindsight, that wasn't even honest, because where I'm at now, I'm like, not just no, hell no. But, and sometimes you don't know until you try either. So, but still, we force people into this imposter syndrome. I would have been perfectly happy being able and allowed to give the answer. I want to do this until I'm 55 and then I'm out. Peace. I even tried kind of to give that answer. It didn't work. And we force people to be this imposter. And then what you end up with is the Dunning-Krueger people. You ever heard that saying? The shit rises to the top. Cream rises to the top, but so does the shit. Again, don't like the one-liners, but there's some truth to it. The Dunning-Krueger effect causes a lot of people that don't belong in those higher roles to get there, because they want that. Oh yeah, hell yeah. They think they're entitled to it, damn it. They have earned it. They want it. And companies say, oh yeah, see, he's been saying for the last 5 years, this is where he wants to be, and he's been working hard to get there. He hasn't really been working hard to get there. I mean, somebody keeps saying he's fooled the right people into believing he, or she, for that matter, have done what they need to do to get there. But they haven't done the work to get there, and they don't give a shit. They just, once they get there, they really believe they belong at the next rung above that. Hell, before they even get to that rung, they believe they belong 2 rungs, 3 rungs above that one. Years ago, my boss, one of my favorite managers, and he's still one of my favorite mentors of all time, and a good friend, he had said, you know, you're going to be a VP someday. And I looked at him and I was like, I don't know about wanting to be a VP. Kind of did want to, in a way. And it was still in my purview. I was young, very young. And I thought, well, you know, well, if you're the CEO, I'll be a VP. But I kind of didn't see it. And at the time, I did think that this might be what I wanted, right? So I'm going to keep that in my purview, and that's where I want to go. And I kept going. And then I just hit a rock. Some people go, well, what was the rock? It was you, right? No, it was that female boss I was talking about that had defrauded a government and her company. And she just put such a bad taste in my mouth for the rest of my career. That was the end of my career. I didn't give a shit anymore. I just want to be an engineer. Let me be an engineer. Maybe let me be a manager, because I think I could do better than that bitch did. I had some really good bosses. Like, I just cited one. But those people ruin people. Those kinds of Dunning-Krueger pieces of shit ruin other employees. I was sick of engineering 10 years before I quit. And it all really stemmed from a couple of people. Not necessarily me. I mean, obviously, I'm the one that went, fuck this. But I cite her and one misogynist I worked with. I just never wanted to deal with either of them, those types again. If I could avoid it, I was going to avoid it like the plague. I suffered from what they call imposter syndrome. Those people made me question myself. And once I got done reevaluating myself entirely, I had reached a point where, okay, that's not me. I am capable. I know who I am. I know what I have to offer. But I hate this job. I don't want to deal with people like that anymore. How do I get away from people like that? Then I came to the conclusion there was no way to get away from people like that. And I was heartbroken. They had taken something I loved and turned it into something I hated. And we love to tell people, oh, it's all your fault. It's all your fault. No, sometimes it's just the nature of the circumstances that surround you. And yeah, making the decision, I hated it, was me. But how I came to that decision was not. And when we tell people you're an imposter syndrome. Oh, it's imposter syndrome. That's the same thing. We're browbeating people for making decisions that other people who are suffering from Dunning-Krueger, which, oh, that sounds like a cool thing to have, Dunning-Krueger. That's who we are as a society. I'd love to say we can do better. I don't know that we can in this particular instance. I think corporate America has been structured this way for so goddamn long that most of the planet is structured that way as far as corporations. And we reward the shittiest people with the higher. And we don't require that good people that are doing their jobs well. The lazy piece of shit that suffers from Dunning-Krueger effect will get the goddamn promotion before the person that's hardworking, who does their job every day and does it well. That's a fact in this country. That's a fact in our society. We don't like to admit it. But as my grandfather said, it ain't who you know, baby girl, it's who you blow. And you're not blowing anybody. And when he used to say that to me, I was a little girl and I didn't know what it meant. Fucker. But yeah, I love to say that we can be better. I'm just not convinced in this instance we can. I hope we can. I don't think so. I really don't. But I'm going to put it out there. Think about it. Hopefully, we can be better. Peace.